Good morning. Welcome to the Everyman Puppet Theatre Let's Make a Puppet video series. My name is Laura Anne Ewald. I am the founder and puppeteer for Everyman Puppet Theatre. And today we are going to make a marionette. Now the marionette is probably the most complex of all the puppets. As I'm sure you can understand, everything else you control down below. The mouth puppet like this, or the hand puppet like this, or the rod puppet like this. Everything's supported down below, whereas the string puppet is supported from above. And you're not actually touching the puppet. You have strings on the puppet, and that's what makes it complicated. Now, I have seen some really complicated puppets. I have a video of a Chinese puppeteer who has a monkey riding a bicycle around him on the stage. I kid you not, this monkey is pedaling, and he's steering, and he's chattering, and it's all done with strings. It's amazing. If you want to look at another good example of the marionette, go online and look for The Lonely Goatherd. It's G-O-A-T-H-E-R-D, one word, The Lonely Goatherd. It's a song in the middle of The Sound of Music in which Maria and the children are putting on a puppet show. Now these were done by Bill Bard. He's a world famous puppeteer, and these puppets are amazing. His goats only actually have a single string on their body, two strings on controlling their bodies, which is what we're going to do today. But their goats have eyelashes that move. They have eyes that move. They have ears that flap. They have tails that flap. They're amazing puppets. So go in, again, The Lonely Goatherd. Look at those puppets. There are some rod puppets in that production too, but they're absolutely fantastic. So let's make a marionette. Okay. What we're going to make today is what I'm calling a bottlelope. Now you've heard of antelope. We're doing a bottlelope, and we're calling it a bottlelope because we're making it out of, wait for it, a bottle. So we're doing a bottlelope, and what you need for a bottlelope is a drinking bottle of some kind and a bunch of bottle caps. Which bottle to choose? This one, there are soda bottles, there are water bottles, there are other soda bottles. You can actually do this with a 2-liter bottle if you want to, but we're going to start with the small drinking, just one serving bottles. I recommend against using the really cheap water bottles, and that's because they don't have enough stiffness to them. These are great for another thing I'm going to show you just a minute, but you want something for your bottlelope, you're going to want something a little stiffer and something that's a little smoother in places, okay? Otherwise, it doesn't matter what brand you choose. Now, the flimsy ones are really good for making stands. And we haven't really talked about stands for our puppets, but if you want to display your puppets, you have to have something to put them on. These bottles are great if you fill them with something like sand. This is play sand, and when you fill it, and if you pound it down with a stick while you're doing it, it becomes a very solid, heavy piece of equipment. And you put at least 3 rubber bands around it, then you can band your rod puppets on it. You can also put your mouth puppet over it. You can also display other things on it. What I'm going to use it for today is I'm going to use it for a marionette stand. Put these back over here. I said marionettes are tricky because you're controlling them from above, and if you're making them, as you're making them, you're going to wish you had at least 3 hands. 4 would be better. So what I'm going to suggest is you make a stand for your marionette. This is simply made out of 2 water bottles filled with play sand. And again, you can use gravel from your driveway. You can use dirt from your yard. Cleaners, dirt's probably not as good as sand or rock because it's not as heavy. Packed in tightly, lids put really snuggy on. If you don't have that to do right now, you could use a water bottle with water in it. You just want to be careful that you don't spill them. And this is actually heavier than a water bottle too. Again, rubber bands. I have a couple sticks here. These look fancy because they're black. They're only black dowels because I used them for another stand at one time. The board across the middle is simply a paint stir stick. And you can get these any place that sells paint gives these out when they sell you your paint. But if you're really nice to them and you go into them and you say, I need to make some puppets and I need some of those paint stirrers, they will generally give you a handful of them. And I put them together here with just regular clips. And then I have little clips in the middle where I've got my legs pre-strung. And I'll talk about the legs in a minute, but I wanted to show you first. This is what it's for. And as I get the puppet created, I'm going to raise this up so I can actually have the whole puppet hanging from this. Now materials. We are making our puppet out of, we need a bottle. Okay, start with a bottle. We need something to stuff the bottle with. I'm using paper towels today, and I stuffed this bottle. This is one we're actually using today, but you want something to stuff the inside. It might be paper towels, it might be white paper. If you want different colors, you can go buy some tissue paper for wrapping. If you go to the gift wrapping area in your store and get tissue paper, then you could make it any color you wanted to. But you need a lot of it because you have to pack it snugly in the bottle because you don't want to be able to see through the bottle. That's the whole key here, is to make this. Now, if you wanted to, you could also put paint on the inside of this. The biggest problem with that is you wouldn't add any weight to it, and by putting paper in it you get a little more weight to it, and a little more weight is good. After the bottle you need bottle caps. For those of you who have watched our video on puppet potential, you've seen this little box of caps, and I have caps from everything. I keep all my caps. If you don't have a lot of caps hanging around and you haven't already started your collection, just make sure you tell everyone in your family that you need them to collect their bottle caps so that you can have them for making a marionette. I even have these funky little black things, which if I thought about it, I would have used these before. And what these are, I bought a set of shelves and 4 legs, and they're actually 5 feet high, and they're 4 legs, and they're actually in each leg is in 2 parts. And so each steel rod had one of these on the end. And if you do the math, I have 16 of these that I could use for feet. But I also have water caps. I have soda caps. I have milk and water jug caps. I have caps from sports drinks. So any kind of different sizes, big ones and little ones. So any size cap will work for this. But you need lots of them. You also need some colored paper for decorating. You need handy dandy glue stick. We've used this before for putting the paper on. You will need some kind of a craft stick or stick, could be out of your backyard, to hang your strings on when you get there. You need some cellophane tape to get things put on snugly. And oh, forgot one thing, the strings. What am I using for the strings? I am using dental floss. I'm not only using dental floss, I'm using waxed dental floss. Now I hope all of you have dental floss in your house, but if you don't, go buy some waxed dental floss, and when you're done with your puppet, you can floss your teeth. 2 for 1. Why do I use dental floss? It is thin and it is very strong. You cannot break dental floss, okay? Now you might say, well, why don't I use fishing line? Because it's clear. Fishing line is the worst thing to use for puppets. I know a lot of people do that, and I've seen it done, and boy, I've taken care of a lot of poor puppets that were so tangled up you couldn't do anything. Any fisherman will tell you that the clear nylon line they use for fishing will tangle, and on a puppet it's even worse because you have multiple lines going to the same puppet. So dental floss. I get the waxed because when you tie knots, the wax will seal the knot, and they'll be less apt to slip. Other knots will come loose eventually, or sometimes really easily, but if the dental floss is waxed, as you pull the knots tight, it seals the knot and it won't come off. Also, it won't slide as much, so you'll have a better job on everything else. So waxed dental floss. So a bottle, something to stuff the bottle, bottle caps, dental floss for your strings, caps for your legs, and paper for decorations, and glue stick to put them on, and tape to hold other things on. Now for tools, it's very simple. You want some kind of a stand with clips so you can hang it up as you're working. You also have to have scissors for cutting your paper. You also need something to put the paper down in the bottle snugly. I recommend, this is just a simple paintbrush, and this works because it's smooth, which means you can shove it way down and it won't catch and come out again, so you can do it. It's easy to put it in. And so a long stick, something that's smooth. So either a paint stick, you could use if you go to the Chinese restaurants, you could use a chopstick. Something long enough and smooth enough that you can work with the paper. And most importantly, you need something to cut the holes. Now, if somebody in your family has one of those little micro drill presses, those are really cool. You can just zip, zip. But if you're like me and you don't feel like getting it out, or you don't have one, it's just as easy to use a hammer, a sharp nail, and most importantly, a piece of scrap wood. Why is that important? Because if you do that to your tabletop, your mother will not be happy with you, okay? So you need a scrap of wood and a nail and a hammer. Doesn't have to be a big hammer, just a little hammer. Now, how many caps do you use? It depends on what you want your puppet to look like. I did mine. Let's see if I can get this out so you can see it. The important thing is that you have an even number of caps. If you're having 2 legs, you don't need as many. If you're going to make it upright, and you could certainly make it upright and put legs on it down here. I'm doing a 4-legged creature. I need 4 legs that are the same length. The important thing is to make sure all your bottle caps are the same size on each leg. Now I have here drinking caps. My knee is a soda cap. Then I have more drinking caps. Then my foot is a combination of it's a sports drink bottle, and the bottom, the sole of the foot, is off of either a milk carton or a water carton. You know, those gallon jugs they have with the blue lids on top of them. So to put this together, it's simply you use your nail and your hammer. Each lid has at the center, I don't know if you can see it with this on, probably not with this light, it's too bad. There is usually a mark on the center of the lid, so it's really easy to find. You put your nail on it, right in the center, and then you hit it with a hammer. Move it in, move it out, and you have a hole. Okay? Now, how long your legs are will depend on 2 things. 1, how many caps you have, and 2, when you get tired of poking holes in your lids. Okay? The important thing is when you poke a hole in your lid, do it from the inside out. Okay, so you want your lid to be sitting upright on your piece of wood, and then you want to hit it, nail, and a hammer. Now, I said the important thing is your caps match in size and shape on each leg. It doesn't matter what you do in one leg, but the other legs all have to match, or your legs won't be the same length. I discovered quite by accident as I was doing this that the lids from the water bottles we use at home and the lids from the water bottles we have in church are different sizes, because I used to collect all the water bottle lids at church, and I had this water bottle lid, and then I held them up together and I realized, oh, it's deeper than the one that I have at home. So I had to make sure I was only using the one size lid, and I had more of the home lids than I did the church lids, so I used all home lids. For my leg, I went ahead and made the top 4 lids, and I made the bottom 5 lids. But it's kind of deceiving to say that, because the top one fits inside. Because the soda cap is bigger, the top one actually fits inside that lid. So actually I have 4 and a pop bottle lid and 4. So it's about the same. So I have a total of 5 and 4 is 9, 10, 12 bottle caps for each leg. And as I finish them, to string them, you can do one of 2 things. You can either just tie a knot in the bottom, lots of knots, over and over and over again, until it's big enough that it won't go in through the hole you punched. The other thing you can do, and I did this on the bottle I used had a red cap on it and a red rim. And so I cut the rim off, and then I cut the rim in little pieces, and then I just tied it around and made a plug so that won't go through the hole either. So either way works. It's easier actually to do a little piece of plastic on it to work as a washer rather than trying to tie knot after knot after knot after knot. So that's my legs. So let's get busy. So first the thing you want to do is take your bottle and you want to stuff it with paper. And I used paper towel, and mine came in half sheets, but if they don't come in half sheets, tear them in half, because you don't want to use a full sheet. You want to make it as soft as you can, and then start stuffing it down the bottle. And that's where your stick comes in handy, because you can stuff it in. Now you want to make sure the bottle is stuffed really tightly. So this bottle has, you can see it has knobs on the bottom, and I use my stick to fill up every single knob in there. Now it's not going to do too much because I only have 1 piece of plywood in here. And I'm going to keep stuffing and keep stuffing and keep stuffing until the entire bottle is full of paper. I already happen to have one here, so I don't have to do it again. Okay. Now, what direction is it going to go? I wanted this to be an animal. I used a diet root beer cap because it was brown. I wanted a brown nose. I put a smile on his face. Where do I put that? Most soda bottles and other kind of drink bottles have an expiration date on them. So I found that so I could cover it up with my smile. But before I put the smile on, I looked at this one also have knobs on the bottom. And I thought, what better thing to have your tail come off of than one of these? This will be the tailbone that the tail is going to come off of. And so when I looked at where the label was, it was opposite one of these. And I said, well, okay, that's going to be the top. And I marked that with a little black piece of paper, or black pen there. And then I went ahead and put my spile on that covers up the expiration date. And by the way, paper on these bottles works very well with the glue stick if you get it saturated. Remember before I said you don't always have to have a lot of glue on it, but in this case you want to make it very gluey so that it will stick on here, and you can actually fold it and push it into the dents in the bottle so it comes on really solidly and it doesn't come off. You can get it off. If you make a mistake, you can get it off and peel it off, but most of the part it stays very well. So now I have a smiley face opposite what's going to be my tailbone. Okay, and this is the way my puppet's going to go. Now, how do I know where the center line is? You take a rubber band. If you take a rubber band and you put it at the top there, and where you want where my middle line is. I have my middle line at the bottom. If you run a rubber band around and you make it all nice and even and flat and everything else, you have a generally feeling that's where the center line is, and you can see I marked it all the way up the back. So now I know where the spine is of my puppet. So I know where the top is going to be. I know where the knots to my strings are going to be. I know where I'm going to put my eyeballs relative to my top. All that by just using a rubber band and getting in there and marking it with a marking pen. Okay, so we've prepared my bottle. I've stuffed it with paper. I put its nose back on. I've covered up my expiration date with a smile. I have my spine marked. Now I go to the legs. And again, one bottle cap at a time, turned upside down. I used a nail and a hammer and a scrap of wood. Don't forget the scrap of wood or else you'll have holes in your table. And you've got it. Then I just took out my dental floss and I just strung it like beads on a wire. Put a knot in one end and figure out what you want. Then you do 4 exactly the same. Again, it doesn't matter how many bottle caps you use. It matters that all of them are the same length and the same size caps. So I have 4 legs. Now I'm going to go ahead and decorate most of this puppet before I start putting the legs on, because once the legs are on, I'm going to have to dangle this puppet and it's going to be really awkward to work with. I have already cut eyes and ears and a nose, and I'm going to get my glue stick out and decorate. What I did for my eyes is I simply took a brown piece of paper and a white piece of paper and a yellow piece of paper, and then I drew in the middle I have yellow eyes. My yellow eyes, the round, perfectly round circle was done with a hole punch, and then I just drew the iris on the middle of that. And I can make this puppet a happy puppet, a sad puppet, a mean puppet, or whatever, depending on which way I put these eyes. So I can put them down this direction, make them kind of goofy looking. I can make them up this direction. I can make them any way I want to once I have the eyes. Now, how did I get the eyes the same size? This comes with that cutting thing. I think I've told you the trick before. Fold over your paper, cut out your shape, and then instead of putting them side by side, open them out so they'll be exactly opposite. And that's what I did here. And I did the same thing for the little piece of white. And then I went ahead and so I have 2 eyeballs that are really close to being exactly the same. Don't remember. And I know where his forehead is because I have a little black mark up there. There's his forehead right there. Okay, now I've decorated my puppet with paper. And he's got a tail. He's got a flicked tail like an antelope. And he's got, my glue is still purple because it's not dry yet. As you glue it onto the plastic, you can also, for example, on the back of the ears, just to make sure the ears didn't come off, I use cellophane tape across the back to make sure it stays on. So I will probably do more spots and stuff on him when I get done, but I want to go ahead and get moving on the strings. So he's got a nose now. You will see him. And he's got a mouth. He's got eyes and ears and a backbone and a tail. Okay. Now, before we start putting the legs on, we have to put on his main strings so that I can hang him from here, and then I can go ahead and work on him. Now, I gave him a short tail so I can still put him up on end. I put off 2 long pieces of dental floss. Now, how long it is depends on how high you want your stand to be, how far away you want your hand to be from your puppet, what's your puppet stage going to be. If you're just playing with them, though, it doesn't have to be all that long. I'm going to pull all of these off of here now. Oops. Put my legs out of the way so we can just use this, and then I'm going to move this up so that we can hang the whole puppet from up the top. And again, I'm just using clips and a piece of wood and some dowels. Nothing fancy about it. Okay, now, how do we get the strings on the body? Because it is wax dental floss, the knots will be very well. Now what I'm going to do is just a slip knot, so that, and the slip knot allows you to, as you pull it tight, it will also be closing on the bottle and won't get any further apart. So if I just take my little end and I take it around once and tie a knot, it's very thin. What I've done is I've made a loop that can get bigger and smaller. And I'm going to do the same end and tie a second knot, and this will freeze it down. This will lock it down. If I can do this. There we go. Now I have a very tight knot, but one end slides in and out so I can make it bigger and smaller. And that's what I'm going to put around. I'm going to do it from behind because I got ears in the way in front. Come on, you. I'm going to take it up to just behind his ears, and then I'm going to pull the knot in until I have a nice tight loop on him. And there's his front string. And you can see it, but it doesn't matter. And if later on you can cover it up with something if you want to. But just to get it started, we want to see it so you can see what I'm doing. But you want to pull that knot down as tightly as you can. And because it's waxed, the knot won't give out, and it won't slide back and forth on the bottle because the wax is soft enough that it grabs onto the plastic and doesn't do anything. So there's my front string. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. Again, I'm tying one around to make this first single knot, and you want to make sure the rest of it, to make sure you've done it right. Oops. Come on. It's really hard to see white on white and all that. Okay, so I have one loop, and I can make my loop bigger. Okay, and I'm going to do it a second time. Just make sure you go around the loop again, not around this long string, because if you do around the long string, you're going to lock your knot and you won't have a slip knot. So we have a slip knot, and we're going to go around his other end. In this case, because of the type of bottle I'm using, I have some hips. So if I tie my knot really, pull it really tight, whoops, goodbye, it's around the hips, so it won't slide forward or backwards because it's going around the smallest part, the smallest diameter of the bottle. And again, this is why I use wax dental floss, because it doesn't slip. Now I have 2 strings in my bottle. And this is all we're going to do for our puppet. We're going to have 2-string puppet. Now I need to put the control on here. For that I need a stick. And really all you have to do is tie a knot. Now I don't want to make mine any longer that it can't sit up like this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to wrap it around. And it probably won't slip because it's waxed. Oops, come back. Until it's about level. With waxed dental floss, it probably won't slip. I can just do that and it'll hang and I don't have to worry about it. Now, when I get done, I will tie it off, but for working on it right now, it'll probably be fine. Now, this one is not quite short enough, so I'll wrap it around one more time. Okay? And then I can put a clip up here and I can start working on the legs. So there's my Bottlelope with a stand made out of flimsy water bottles and play sand. You might also use kitty litter. If you have kitties at home, you could use kitty litter. That's another really clean thing. You want whatever you put in the bottle, you want it to be dry and you want it to be clean, because otherwise you could get things growing in there that you don't want growing in there. Now he's kind of not quite level. Now I'm going to fix him so he's level. So now I know how long my legs are going to go. Now this is the tricky part, putting the legs on. This is when you wish you had 4 hands, or at least a prehensile tail. Until he's about where his legs are. And that's about right. Okay? Now, to put the legs on, the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to use some cellophane tape, and we're just going to tape them on. Because you really have to get all 4 legs in place before you start tying knots on things. And you're going to bounce all over the place, aren't you? This is why you really have to have these turning the other direction so it won't lean. There it goes. Okay. Now, hold still. Even stuffed with paper, it's going to be lightweight and it's going to bounce all over the place. So, I want the legs to come up just about to the bottle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it where I want it. Hold it in place with my thumb. Then I'm going to get a piece of cellophane tape and tape the string on. And I have 1 leg. Okay? Then I'll put this one on, take it up to where I want it, and put a piece of tape on it. Now, since we're doing it with tape, if we want to pull it up and down, we can adjust the length of the legs if we want to. So I'm going to turn this whole thing around. And here's leg 3. Not a big piece of tape. Approximately where the other one is. And then our 4th leg. What did I do with my 4th leg? This is a really good argument for a clean work surface, but I never have a clean work surface, so it's always a problem. Now, I have 4 legs on my Bottlelope. And because he's using bottle caps, he's got a lot of movement and a lot of sound in him. So it's kind of fun. But he's not done yet. No, you're not done yet. No, you're not. But he started. Again, this is when you wish you had 4 hands. So what I can do, if I want to make these even, now remember I already know the legs are the same length because I use the same kind of bottle caps, the same number of the same kind of bottle caps. What I'm going to want to do is I'm going to turn this again. I'm going to take the 2 strings of the opposite legs and I'm going to tie a knot in it. And this allows me to pull it up a little bit if I want to make it a little shorter. This allows me to check to make sure they're hanging the same way. This one is a little shorter than that one. This one's a little longer than that one. When you get them exactly where you want them, fool around with them. This is where it gets kind of jumbly. And tie it in a knot. In this case, you want a square knot. I went left over right, and then right over left. so that it's not a knot that's going to come out. And because, again, we use wax dental floss, these should hold and not come loose. Okay? So there's 2 legs. I'll do the same in the back. If I'm doing right over left. And left over right. If you're ever curious about the kind of knots, when I call square knots or loop knot, but you can go online and look at knots and they'll find all sorts of ways of tying knots. Boy Scouts are usually good at that. Girl Scouts are good at that. Sailors are really good at that, but I'm not very. The idea is you want a slip knot on the upper strings to keep it snug. And you want a square knot on these so it doesn't slide. And now I can go through with my scissors and I can cut off all my extra string. In this case, I'll leave some. Just don't cut the long strings, otherwise you'll be nicked. So now I have a Bottlelope with legs. But he looks a little funny because his legs aren't actually connected. So let's go ahead and connect his legs a little bit. Now, as I said before, we're doing a very simple 2-string puppet. You could make this one a lot more complicated if you wanted to. For example, if you start watching The Lonely Goat Herd and you decide you want a head to be separate, then you could actually, this would no longer be the head. You could make that the front of the Bottlelope, and you could put a cup or something for a head up here, and then you could have strings on the head so they would move. If you wanted to put strings on the legs, I use the bottle caps for knees on purpose, because now I can drill a hole through the side of my bottle cap, and I can put a string on there, and I can have both knees come up if I wanted to, or all 4 knees. I don't think this particular pup is going to need strings on the legs, because as you can see, there's a lot of movement just because we have all these different rattly bottle caps. There's a lot of movement, there's a lot of sound, and so he's kind of cute. So now I want to do something to help cover up all these strings and connect my legs to the body a little bit. And what I did is I simply cut 2 pieces of, now I got hooked on these rib scissors. These are, if you know somebody who does scrapbooking, then they have textured scissors and they cut these funny ridges. But you can just tear it or use regular paper, regular scissors. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this across the back and glue it down so that it will cover. I can put paper across the back like this, and I can glue that on. I'm not going to do it right this second, but you can put patches on your puppet. You can do anything you want to on your puppet to decorate it and to make it look like the strings are connected. I'll do this front one. The back one I need to shorten up my strings yet. So if I just lay this across the knot, that takes it down. It takes it down the string that goes into the legs. Then it just gives it an illusion of having legs are actually attached to the bottles. And you can always shorten up your strings. Okay? I'm not going to do the back right now, but that's just to give you an idea of what you can do with it. But this particular puppet, I always need 3 or 4 hands when I'm doing marionettes. This particular puppet has a lot of movement in it. He makes a lot of noise. This particular one is kind of cheerful because he's got a smile on his face. He has a little bum tail. So you have a simple marionette. And this one I said I would probably shorten up both sets of legs to make them a little bit tighter to the bottle. And then I can decorate any way I want. I have whole patches of paper I can stick on the side, so he'll be a spotted Bottlelope. So here we have our Bottlelope. Again, there's no right or wrong way to do this. You can use any kind of bottle. You can use any colors. You can use any kind of bottle caps. They're very excitable creatures, by the way. They like to go around like that. You can put big spots on them. You could put little spots on them. You could put orange paper inside, and then you could paint stripes on them to make them a tiger. You could put bright white paper inside and put black stripes on to make them a zebra. You can make anything you want to. That's what's so great about making puppets out of ordinary objects, because there's no right or wrong way to do it. You just look at the objects you have at hand and you can go ahead and put anything together you want. My suggestion for these is using a stiffer bottle. Doesn't mean you can't use a ribbed one. If you want to put glue on it and paper on it, you'll probably want a smoother one. If you're going to decorate with paint, it doesn't matter, or even not better than paint, probably permanent markers would probably work better on plastic. Then it doesn't matter what shape your bottle is in. Your stick can be anything. I happen to have these craft sticks that are like this, but it doesn't really matter. I have to make his feet the way I made them, but if I had something better, I could use, or something different, I could make that too. But there's all sorts of things you can do. The basic, though, is a drinking bottle, a small bottle, well, it could be a big bottle too, a bottle caps stacked up for legs, and dental floss for your strings, both for construction and for running it because it's strong, and the wax because it won't slip. But then you can do absolutely anything else you want to with it. So here's the Bottlelope. Hello. Thank you for joining us for our Let's Make a Puppet, for our Let's Make a Marionette segment, and I hope you have fun with your bottle caps and your Bottleopes. Thank you.